Today's guest, Heather Taylor, is definitely no stranger to starting over. In the past 24 years, she's built and rebuilt her business multiple times. But most recently, and what she's most proud of, is her multiple team locations that cover from the Seattle area all the way up to the Canadian border. Now, before we get started, if you head down to the description below, you can learn more about the exclusive Inner Circle group. And as always, I'm your host and San Francisco referral partner, Shawn Kunkler. Heather, thanks for joining me today. I'm excited to sit down with you.
Hi, Sean. So am I. I'm glad to be here.
I find one of your stats just incredible how you broke into a very, very, very tight market and then thus became the number one within a 4 year period. But before we start unpacking that, because I feel like there's going to be so many good nuggets within that, if you could, in a couple sentences, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, I'm Heather Taylor, and I have a team, the Taylor team of Washington. And my team covers Seattle, greater Seattle, Bellevue, all the way up to the Canadian border, which makes us somewhat unique because we're not like a target geographic area. We cover all the Pacific Northwest in that corridor. So a little unique because we are based out of different areas, which um, I think adds a little dimension to it compared to a traditional team. And yeah, I've been in it 24 years and I've worked in a lot of different markets. So kind of have gone through all the ups and downs and challenges of working in many different locations, which also has been interesting.
Yeah, and I would love to talk about that because a lot of the people who listen to this are building or rebuilding their businesses and having 24 years, but not only having the experience, but the experience of doing it at a very, very high level.
Hmm.
I feel like there's going to be a lot to glean from that.
Yeah.
Where are you? I'm trying to think of how to ask this. Because you're in so many different sub markets,
Yes.
your team is pretty spread out. Let me start with what's your role within the team?
Yeah, I'm a traditional team leader. I'm here to mentor and help the people on my team build their businesses. I'm not a lead provider. Doesn't mean I don't have leads that I give my team, but that's not the type of team we are. It's more of a leader and mentor situation where we more collaborate, and I'm here to support and be more that support role to help them build their businesses and learn how to scale up like I did. So that's really the value I bring as the team leader. And otherwise, we all pretty much individually run our businesses as our own businesses, even though they're branded by our team. It's not that I'm in charge of doling out who's going to go do a listing or anything like that. Like everybody
Yeah.
works independently within the team on their own business.
I'm on the same page. I
Yeah.
I feel like I lead my team the same,
Yeah.
very similar way.
Yeah.
Is like my philosophy is I'll teach how to run an amazing, outstanding business that you can break off at any point and just
Right.
absolutely crush it, but you're receiving so much value and support for being a part of it that you just
That's
don't
right.
want to leave.
Absolutely. It's just like the value proposition is so strong that and and create it's a lonely business when you're a single agent. So
Yeah.
having the collaboration always there, a phone call away, a co-list away, whatever it's going to
Yeah.
be, I think it creates way more of a an environment that feels more safe and that you have a safety net. You can go on vacation, like all those things that it's so
Yeah.
hard to do when you're just a individual agent, just like wearing all the hats and running up and
Yeah.
down the road. So I think there's a lot of value in it if you do it right and you're
Yeah.
not taking too much from your team members on splits and or trying to have too much control when they're still independent contractors,
Yeah.
it's kind of it's a dance.
It's a total dance. I mean, it's kind of you're playing between the gas and brake the whole time
Yes.
and trying to figure out. And I mean, not for nothing, agents are, all of us, team
Yeah.
leads included, are inherently control freaks.
Yeah,
And so
totally.
figuring out, all right, how do I actually let go of this so that person
Absolutely.
can flourish?
Yeah.
It's really genuinely hard. But
Yeah.
it's also the flip side is what's made you successful is 24 years of trials and tribulations, and I guarantee your best learnings were your biggest blunders,
Yeah, totally.
and thus your team needs to have safe blunders for them
Hmm.
to get those lessons too. Otherwise, they're not growing. And so
That's right.
it's the hat that you wear it's a very, very tough. It's tough.
Yeah, because you're already, you're focusing on your own business. So it's ultimately like you can't take your eye off your own prize. So you still need to maintain all your same consistency and your tasks and your daily, right? And so you're still focusing on how my business continues to grow and stay on track in terms of referrals and everything else.
Yeah.
But then wear a totally different hat to make sure, hey, are you doing okay? What do you need from me? So there's a lot of just that stepping in and out of a role situation.
I would say that's for me personally the hardest. The context switching
Mm-hmm.
of working with a client is different than reviewing a budget, which is
Yeah,
different than
totally.
doing this podcast, which is then different from meeting with somebody it's like that's the part that fatigues me the most
Mm-hmm.
is switching my brain between these,
Totally.
like, who do I have to be to do this role or for this person?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, that's exhausting.
And it's funny because I was thinking about this morning that I don't even know why it popped in my head, but how it is so much easier when you're choosing to be independent and you don't have a team because you don't have overhead the same. You don't, like, you're really, your bottom line is typically better because you're just totally in charge of yourself and you can decide when you scale up, scale down, and marketing costs and this and that and the other. Um, and I think a lot of agents think that having a team means that somehow the team leader is going to just benefit so huge financially, and it's like it's not about the financial aspect of it. It's really not. And life is a lot simpler when you're just in charge of your own business. So there's a whole lot that goes with it, and I would not say the financial reward is where it comes from. It's more just the
Yeah.
reward of helping others and being a support.
I appreciate that you bring that up because I feel like there's a pressure within the culture of the community. There's
Totally.
what, like 2.5 million agents nationwide, and I feel like there's behind that there's a communication of, well, if you're doing well, you build a team, you bring
Yeah.
people on, and then you scale it up and you do more and more and more. But I think to your point is, I think an important piece for agents is to step back is, where do you find the joy? Do you
That's
find
right.
joy in mentoring and coaching and building? If you don't do it.
Exactly.
Because to your point, you're going to be spending a ton of money.
Yeah.
You're going to be the HR director, you're going to be the
Hmm.
CFO, you're going to be the CEO. Like
Totally.
it's some days are rough. And you're doing everything but the thing that you actually enjoy sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of agents, it depends on where they came from before, but if you don't have management background or anything, and then you try and do that, you're trying to teach yourself something when you don't even have that skill and you're still trying to be self-employed. Like, it's not a simple thing for a lot of agents to do. It really depends on what you did before you were in the industry.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I
Yeah,
think I think there's a lot of tools and there's a lot. It's a lot easier to learn things, but you then have to allocate the time. And it's like,
totally.
if you're then allocating time to do that, you're not in front of clients, you're not making money. And
Absolutely.
it's I've seen every single time I brought somebody on, my personal transactions have dipped every
Hmm.
single time.
Yep, because your
It's
focus is like you're half in, half out,
yeah.
and it's definitely I don't find it to be like my personal business is not as consistent that as if I was on my own, of course, but the reward of it's like, of course, as a team leader, you can kind of pull that plug anytime or scale back down so you only have like one agent or something if you really wanted to do that. But the reward, if you find joy in it, is just that seeing their numbers increase, their production, their referrals, their love and excitement and passion for the business is like, that's just so cool.
That's where I find the joy. I
Hmm.
mean, like nothing, there's like no better feeling when somebody has their first deal when they're on the
Yeah,
team, and it's just
totally.
like this. It's just that's a different level, and so there
Yeah.
is like real deep joy. And so, with your business currently, how many markets are you all in?
So, from the Seattle area to the Canadian border, there's 4 counties,
Okay.
and pretty much just up and down the I-5 corridor. And that corridor is surrounded by our bodies of water, pretty much, Pacific Ocean, Puget Sound, inlet, essentially. So I have the Seattle Bellevue Greater Market, which I have 2 agents in.
Hmm.
One is my lead agent slash partner, which is my son,
Oh, cool.
Sterling, and he was licensed before we formed a team, so he didn't come on as a newbie. Um, so he lives in Seattle, and so he's the team lead for that market. And there's another agent that works with him, who came onto our team last year from 17 years in commercial.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's new on the residential side, but had previously worked with Sterling at another firm.
Mm.
So they already had a relationship, and Mark was just commercials just been so tough, for several years now, and has a huge like family base in Bellevue, Seattle, and lots of connections, and felt like, wait a second, I need to transition and start doing, residential and resale and new construction,
Hmm.
with all the different contacts he has. So he came on board, and so Sterling mentors him in that market,
Hmm. Hmm.
and he's learning a lot. But basically, so far, I mean, for at least a year, which that'll be this summer, he'll need to be like doing all his deals with Sterling, so that
Yeah.
he's like literally understanding the flow of the residential side of things.
I
So
I feel like he's going to be such a killer when it
I
comes to
know.
like new development
Yeah.
and talking to developers and like
Have a really
understanding
good, he has connections with these, what were his commercial clients, but then are buying land, they're getting dirt and
exactly.
they're doing building projects and subdivisions. And so that may end up being like a very good trajectory in that portion of our business for that area,
Absolutely.
especially because Seattle, Bellevue is about east side, Redmond, Kirkland, Bellevue, all that.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of development going on. So yeah, so that's kind of cool. So they're kind of unique in that niche. And then I have an agent, and they also cover Snohomish County, which is one county north. So that's like up through Everett, where Boeing plant is, and all that stuff. So they go as far up as past Everett. And then the next county, I have an agent who lives in Anacortes, which again, it's a water town. It's a
Hmm.
small community. It's the hub to get to San Juan Islands by ferry,
Hmm. Hmm.
but very desirable. Lots of people in the Northwest love Anacortes. And so she lives there, but covers that whole county with surrounding areas. Um, and then up in the last county, which is Whatcom County, which is like Bellingham. Most people have heard of Bellingham, but all the way up to the Canadian border, which is Blaine, which consists of Birch Bay and Semiahmoo. All of those areas are all water front, water view. Like there's the whole corridor pretty much north of Seattle up. there's a lot of waterfront, and that's a lot of the properties we tend to sell.
Hmm.
Um, and I've two other agents in this county as well as myself. And then I do also work down in the Seattle Bellevue area only because that's where I'm from, and I still get calls all the time. Um, my son and I have a waterfront listing in Seattle right now that's, a beautiful property. So we'll do a lot of collaboration
Yeah.
depending on if it's my client that's calling, then, I'll go ahead and work together and tag team with somebody. And then also a lot of people on my team, they co-list together because we're all from Seattle and Bellevue. So
Hmm.
we're all born and raised down there. So even though we live in different areas now, that's really where we all came from.
Yeah.
So our expertise really does cover the whole corridor. So even if we don't live down there, everybody gets phone calls. So like my son just did a co-list with an agent that lives up here, and it was, eastern part of the Seattle area, like heading up towards the mountains kind of thing. So yeah, so we kind of work it out, which makes it cool because that means you can get a phone call and it can be an hour and a half from where you live, but you're like, you know what? I have a specialist on my team. That's where he works, so I'm going to have him be your number one, and I'll still be on the transaction with you. I'll still work with you, but he's boots on the ground, so we're just going to tag team it. And so that happens a lot with us just because we
Mm.
all have connections in the same area.
That's such a good way to structure it. And from a
Hmm.
client's perspective, anytime I've brought somebody else on, they're always like, "That's great." It's
Yeah,
they
two
know it's
for one.
another set of hands.
Yeah, totally. And then I let them work out their split structure. Like how are you guys going to divide it up? Who's like
Yeah.
physically more time intensive with this situation? Is it, on site, you need to be there to show, what exactly is going on? So I just let them work that out because there's so many variables with that. And it's like,
Yeah.
you can't set some specific rule for that. And it's like, it's their earnings and it's their money and their time. So that's really your guys' decision.
That's what we do. We have like if there's a lead, for example, there's a portion of it goes back into the business, so then we can
Totally.
pay for marketing and support. And so if two people are sharing it, that fee is one time and then just gets split. And so it's
Yes.
not times two
Yes.
because I want it to be, sounds like similar to you. I
Yeah.
want it to be beneficial for them to
Yeah. So
to
where
keep
they
it
want to do
into
it, right? It's like
exactly
this is
where it's
wow.
not the piece of the pie is like, oh great, I have like a sliver.
Yeah.
Like they should be making a good living off of
Absolutely.
this.
And it's really, again, your retention. I've seen teams, and there was a time early on where I was running a team where if that if that compensation doesn't seem very fair to that agent on your team, the retention is so low, your turnover is so high,
Mhm.
nobody's staying when they feel underpaid and appreciated.
Yeah.
So it's like they're going, well, then I can go work on my own and collect all of it. So it has to be something that there's like, where's the value in it for them? And so I am very sensitive to that because I do know that your retention rate is way higher if you keep your team members happy and they feel like what they're taking home is not a huge, offset compared to what they'd be doing on their own. So I think that and really the longer you have agents, the better your business stability is anyways, because then
100%.
you know you're getting repeat phone calls on these past clients over and over again, and it's just a much more solid and cohesive environment, as well as personalities
Yeah.
that stay together.
I completely agree. I think you when you are able to retain people, you retain the culture
Totally.
because and I'm sure you've experienced it because you have a significant size team. When you bring one person on, the whole dynamic changes.
For sure. And sometimes it's not a good dynamic. So
I
it's like
know.
you don't want to risk it by bringing even too many people on because every time you do that, of course, it changes, right?
It totally does.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I've learned, well, I've learned two things. Hire slow, like make
Yes.
sure they're really a good fit, and
Mm-hmm.
fire fast if they're not.
Totally.
The other side is I am in California probably like the third worst interviewer of anybody here. So like Kat
Yeah.
on my team knows like I am not the first person to interview anybody because I'm like
Yeah.
they're great.
Oh, I like them.
Like I'm selling them
Yeah.
as to why they should join.
Right.
And yeah, it's funny. Like everybody knows like I totally suck at it. So they're like, no, we'll do
Keep
the
them
first
out.
we'll
Yeah.
do the first rounds and then we'll pass it back to you.
No, there's definitely a system to it. I use the DISC.
Yeah,
Um,
same.
and then I look at it and go, okay, cool, yeah. And then maybe interview them again after I've reviewed it. And then usually I'll put my son Sterling like on a call or something one on one. Like I'm not involved. I'm just
Yeah.
like you feel it out, see what you think too. And especially if they're going to be somebody that's also working down, in his area, it's super important. But
Yeah.
on top of it, just kind of a second feel. And then I go to the rest of the team and I talk to them about it and say, look, this
Same.
is what we're considering. This is who they are, where they're coming from, so on, so on. And, kind of get a temperature check on
Yeah.
everybody. And I don't have anybody that says no, because obviously they trust my judgment, but I want them to feel that they are included. Because if somebody is like, you know what, like, I think we have enough people right now, and I think that, it gels, and I don't know if we really need to add that necessarily to the mix, then I would totally be considerate of that and think about it, and maybe ask more questions as to why you feel that way, or what are we not doing right that's making you feel that way, those type of things. So
Yeah.
um, I do want them to be involved in that process, because it really is, again, I mean, we are a family team, because it's not just my son, but my sister's my assistant.
Oh, well, that's super cool.
Yeah, she works from home. She doesn't live anywhere near me. She lives like south of Seattle, like
Okay.
southeast of Seattle. Uh, and she has three kids in school, and she's busy, but she works for me as my assistant, but she also supports the team. She does all the listing inputs, um, does all the listing prep, the paperwork, gets it into our, platform, signatures, whatever. So she's just kind of like the back end for a lot of that stuff. And so, yeah, so it's like, yeah, it's a family team, but it's even more family team because I do think of the rest of the
Yeah.
non-related agents as, part of my family, my extended family. So,
I think that's really, and I do something similar. I think it's really important to get the feedback from everybody else.
yeah,
I think part of it, you definitely get buy-in,
totally.
but you can also hear their concerns, and sometimes people will bring up things that are really valid. Sometimes they're things that just need to be addressed.
Totally.
But yeah, I'm like flashing to when we were about to hire somebody, and the way we do it is they'll start with the operations manager, and then they'll do first round, and then get passed to each agent, and then to me.
Yeah, nice.
And basically, everybody has to keep saying yes for them to go to the next level.
That's
And
awesome.
so if there's a no, then that's a conversation. But then we got through this one person, they went through everybody, and it was two people had brought up that they would just need a lot of work, like nurturing and help.
Right.
And we just didn't have at that time the infrastructure to do that. And
Right.
so we passed on that person. But
Yeah.
I think sometimes having that collective feedback is so important because I don't
Yeah.
know. Again, I suck at hiring, and so
And it's
getting it.
easy to kind of, like somebody on a couple initial meetings or whatever, but everybody has their own radar about things. And so
Yeah,
sometimes, it just helps to get that, like you said, the buy in,
yeah,
just knowing that other people are like, yeah, this is cool. And we also don't hire anybody unless they've been licensed at least 3 years. And in Mark's case, he wasn't in residential 3 years, but he's obviously very well experienced. So, we don't bring anybody in that's literally like, oh, how do I write an offer? Like,
So
no.
much work.
Yeah, no,
I got anxiety when you said that.
yeah, it's like, no, no, no. I mean, oversight is one thing, but, and definitely, like, of course, if they're coming from a different firm and they're coming to our firm and they need to get familiar with all of our internal infrastructure, like, that makes total sense to me. And anything of that nature, but yeah, not to the level of having to like walk them through that. The only thing I do though is like for the first like 5 contracts or whatever they do that I'm copied on their Authenticign so that I can just go over it and just double check it. Once I see that they're structuring clean offers that I like, because we know a lot of agents have bad habits. Doesn't matter how long they've been doing it.
It's
So,
true. And I think the longer you have been doing it, the worse your habits are and the
totally.
more just calibrating. And I
Yes.
think like the way we do it is we kind of just have a house rule. It's like there's 1,000 different ways to do it, but the way our team does it
Yes.
is this way. And
Yes.
and so the goal is if I write the offer, if Nancy writes the offer, or
Yeah.
whoever, it looks like the same package, the same presentation.
That's
It's
right.
got the same documents. Everything's buttoned up in the same way where
Yes.
we know that both client A and B have had the same good experience.
Absolutely. Because it's like, I just not that long ago got an offer on something, and initially the agent who showed it and was expressing that they would be writing, I'm thinking, oh, well, they're on so and so's team, so they're going to be good. Like, I should be happy with what they're going to put together. It started off bad, and unfortunately we did go under contract, and it was like a nightmare the whole time. And I'm thinking, this person shouldn't even be on that team. I don't even know what's going on over there, right?
Yeah. I mean, and from like a branding perspective,
Yeah,
like obviously you haven't said the name, but it then puts a cloud on the whole
it
from
does.
like A to Z. Everybody
Yeah.
now has that same like, oh, that wasn't that great.
No. And ironically, of course, I've heard since that the person is gone from that team. And it's like, well, that's no surprise, because, like, if you're not representing what the whole, like, objective of the team image and how the team performs and what that looks like to their colleagues in doing business, like, that's not good. That's definitely, I mean, you're representing a name that's not just you being out and being an agent. It's attached to a name that
Yeah.
is much bigger than that. So,
100%. I
yeah.
mean, it's like if you walk into Louis Vuitton, it's
Yeah,
every
exactly.
single person is representing that experience,
Absolutely.
which is then representing the brand and the merchandise. And
Absolutely.
and it's like, I mean, it quickly can all fall apart if you walk in and the person's like, "Yo, what's up?"
I know,
And you're
totally.
like, "Oh my God, really? That's how we're talking? That's how
Like,
we're doing this?"
ooh. I
Uh,
100% agree.
and that's where it's funny. I hate the word luxury in our
Yeah,
industry because everybody throws it around.
I
But when
know.
I think of luxury, I think of not a dollar sign, but an experience behind
Yes.
it.
Yes.
Of it's a high level, superior level
Yes.
of service and experience that's exactly the same each time.
Absolutely.
Like,
It's for me, a lot of my, I was in management, other facets, but I was in management at Nordstrom.
mm,
And so, like, learning that, and of course, for us in Seattle, we are the the original. So, the message that Nordstrom was growing up, and then also then becoming an employee there and learning what that message always had to be conveyed consistently, and the policies that were some of them very generous, of course, like you can return anything anytime, da 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 da, but it was always because it was for the experience of the customer, and that the customer was always right. So it's like those are the kind of things you take with you and you just re-implement once you've learned those. Like, those are very important things. You see the value in it. I grew up going there as a kid. It was my grandma's favorite place because of those exact same reasons. So, that's what keeps your customer forever.
It is so telling at the way that you approach business, because I understand the Nordstrom's model, and they
Totally.
really do. Like I grew up in Connecticut, and there was a Nordstrom's there, and I always bought my shoes there because I
Totally.
knew they not only had an amazing selection, but I would always be taken care of.
Absolutely. And it's, I was actually sad because I just read in the Seattle Times they're selling.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah. So that's a sad end of an era. But yeah, I mean, that's really what their whole brand was built on. And I, it can be that in any business, whatever it is but when it's a service industry, that's just the thing, right? We're here to serve, and we're here really to provide the best possible experience and service for our client, whether it's a seller or a buyer, and that they walk away and we're like, that was so easy. That was so much easier than I thought it was going to be. Oh my God, you took all the stress out of it. You did this, you handled this, you problem solved it when this happened, and I didn't have to do all of it.
That's the best. I find that is the best compliment we receive. Is
Totally.
when a client's like, "Oh, that was easy," and you're
Yeah,
sweating,
you're
your
like in the
clothes
back
are
of them.
tattered. You're like, "That was 4,000 emails."
Yeah, I'm glad you think it was easy, right? And sometimes I'll just say, I'll say to clients sometimes when, like, wow, that's when they started off and their impression was like, we get paid too much money, blah blah blah, right? Especially when you're sitting at a listing table, that our compensation's too much and all this other stuff. But then they have a great experience, and at the end, it's like, I'm so glad it seemed so seamless, but that's exactly what a real true professional does. Concierge agents handles everything from beginning to end, and we don't leave you hanging. And I was this morning, literally had to go to a home closing today. As you can see, this weather, it was torrential downpour. I had
Oh,
to go to
good.
their house, pick up like 2 tote boxes of ridiculous small accessories that have no value, and they don't live here anymore, but I'm going to go put them in my storage unit and hold on to them till August so that they can get them, and I'm thinking, this is like above and beyond. And I know there's a ton of agents that don't do these kinds of things, but
Yeah.
that's just what you do when you're a full service agent, right? You just do whatever.
Yeah. What's the rule? If you do what others won't do, you'll have what everybody else doesn't have.
That's right. That's
Right.
right. It's like, it seems like such a silly use of my time, to spend an hour this morning and doing something I definitely did not want to do in this weather either. But it was like, so what? So it's done. It's in my storage unit. It's going to sit there, and they're happy. And it has nothing really to do with what the value of what these belongings were. It's like, if that's what they wanted, that's totally fine. So,
Yeah. I mean, I think and that's a hallmark of a really solid agent is you just get stuff done,
yeah,
and
totally.
it's not it's you don't push it off, you don't sling it to somebody else, you just get it done.
Yeah.
And like
And
I
it's everything, it is. It's everything. I think a lot of people just have that misconception that you're just coming in and you're just like selling a house, and it's just like, okay, then you pass it off to escrow and you're good. It's like,
yeah,
it's
it's
not just
anything
the
but.
details of the transaction, it's the personalities and the emotions, and cleaning toilets, and taking stuff to the dump, or posting stuff for sale on Craigslist for them. I mean, there's just so many different things that a good realtor does, and that really is what's the difference. And I don't think a lot of consumers always get that, but when you're lucky enough, you have clients that do. They're your clients for life, and that's really all that matters, is the people you surround yourself with that appreciate what you do, find value in it. And once you have those, really, it's not like there's enough business to go around for everybody. It's not like everybody needs to own, their entire market, You can do really well with just maintaining really good relationships with your past clients and getting referrals and your repeat business. And I mean, of course, we all want new leads, but it's a business in itself just to run off of something over time with the foundation you have.
I literally earlier today had a conversation with Lindsay Jacobs, and her mom, they've been in the business for a very long time.
Yeah.
And they're out of St. Louis, and 95% of their business is referral.
Yeah.
And
Like
it's,
the
and
phone just rings. It's
it
not.
just rings. And it
Yeah,
goes back to your point. It's like, just do really good work.
that's right. That's right.
And like your clients are stressed out. Take
Hmm.
as much of that off of their plate as possible. And
Absolutely.
they'll thank you. And again, the highest honor is like, oh, that was easy.
Absolutely. You're
And
like,
and
I'm glad you think so. You know, I mean, I
and I
do
think,
think it's hard in certain markets that are really saturated because you
yeah,
have to work so much harder to keep the loyalty, like in the Seattle Bellevue market, just like it is in any large city. You
mhm,
know, um, there's thousands of agents,
yeah,
and even when you've done a good job for them, you still have to like keep doing the touch, the post close touch, and then the anniversary touch, and the holiday
yeah,
touch, and the this, because there's so much going on in the world around them, and
yeah.
it's so chaotic. And if you don't like keep your message and your branding like consistent with them, like literally you can get taken, just kicked to the curb because their coworker has a friend that will list their house, and you're like, wait a second, what? So
Um,
I do think in the different markets where the cities are larger, it's harder. And I mean, I've been in those. I was in Phoenix. I come from Seattle. I know those markets, and it is hard. And like my son Sterling says, like the way we have to market, the way we, do different things and approach retention is, or leads. I mean, whether we get new leads or our client retention is just different.
mhm.
He'll say that, than you do, because it's like I'm in a small community now. It's way more, personal, and it's just that small community vibe to where people are more committed. Once they're committed, that's it,
Yeah, yeah.
and you don't have thousands of agents that you're
Yeah.
having to try and somehow keep your head above water for them to remember your name.
Yeah, I'm on the former rather than the latter.
Yeah,
We have in San Francisco, where the whole city's 7 by 7 miles, which is
yeah,
smaller than Disney's parking lot.
yeah, that's crazy.
And there's the last I heard, there's 6,000 realtors.
It's insane.
6,000. And so, to your point,
Yeah,
it's not that everybody knows two or
yeah,
three agents; they know 20 or 30 agents,
totally.
and you're constantly fighting to to keep in front of them in a
Yes.
positive, helpful way
Mm-hmm.
that is beneficial for them, and that is so incredibly hard. I've
Yeah.
lost the whole city 7 by 7 miles. It's
Yes.
tiny, and
Right.
I've lost clients because they're like, oh, we want to sell, but this person knows this this street better. And you're like,
Yeah.
are you kidding me?
Which is also so funny when that the consumer has that concept that you have to live in that particular community or whatever, right? It's like
So dumb.
we're realtors. Like we analyze the market, we know our market. We don't have to just be in one radius. Like I mean, to the conversation going back to what my team does and where we work.
Yeah.
It's like I know what's going on down in Bellevue. Like if somebody wants to call me up on the phone right now, I'm going to tell them, and that's an hour and a half away from me. So it's of course a lot of that is because I'm in it because my team is all in it, but nonetheless, like anybody's perception that you can't sell a house like, you know, 30
That one,
miles from you.
I think I always find that's a very bizarre data point for a seller. Like
Yeah.
I always find, and I usually will like jokingly be like, do you think your dentist will do a better job if he comes to your home and looks at your tooth versus you going to 20 minutes away?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
it's the same tooth. Like if you understand the sales and marketing process,
That's
like
right.
Put me in any state,
That's
anywhere in the
right.
world.
That's
I
right.
know the formula.
The
Like,
formula works.
I will sell it. I don't even
Yes.
care. I would love that challenge. I should get a license in another
I
state
know,
and just
right?
be
Just to
like,
try it.
I
Well,
want
the
to
other
try
thing
this
too
challenge.
is it's like it's not just sticking the sign in the yard. Like
No.
you guys got to get over the mindset that it's about, oh, this is an area. What about how they negotiate and work for you and
Yeah.
is working for your bottom dollar, and how are they handling things during the inspection, and how, like all of the other things that are way beyond, like, oh, well,
Way
I
beyond.
live 4 doors down, or I sold 2 houses down the street. Like, how do we know how those went? Yeah, they sold, but how do we know? Did they get them all in their on their net? Did they, have to go through a bunch of hoops during inspection and ended up paying more out of pocket? Like, what exactly is the story? Did they buyer have financing problems and it took 2 more weeks to close? I mean, you know.
You know what's really funny is it just dawned on me. I had a client who's an attorney, and I helped him buy a place, and then he had a place in the Oakland Hills, which is
Okay,
over the
yeah,
bridge in a market I don't typically work.
yeah,
And he was like, "Hey, I want you to help me sell it." And I was like, "Hey, man, that's just not my market. Like, I would love to. I can fly wing. I'll bring
yeah.
in another agent." He's like, "Nope, you're doing it." And he's like, "I trust you." And I was
Nice.
like, "Okay."
Yeah.
And we used the same formula, and we actually sold it for that neighborhood. It was a record sale.
That's awesome.
And so, yeah, I mean, it doesn't. It really
That's the thing.
genuinely, it
It really
doesn't
doesn't. I mean,
matter.
not for the sense of when you know what you're doing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
obvi-
It,
obviously, being a neighborhood expert, like, again, like I'm in an area where there's 2 gated communities, and uh, you should know them really well and be one of the top agents that sell, because they're very specific, and
yeah.
this is a small area, and you should know all of your things about it. So it's always funny when those particular areas, you see somebody that hires somebody that doesn't even drive up here, like, the agent, right? You're like, they don't even come up here, and they're like listing, you know.
Yeah.
But that's more when it's a niche market, not like a
Yeah.
city, right? Like, there's two ways of looking at it, but
Sure,
nonetheless,
sure.
I try to tell people, look, we'll sell in Eastern Washington, and that's on the other side of the mountains. I mean, you have a referral, we'll find you somebody over there, but we'll tag team it,
Yeah.
because we're just going to give it more market exposure for listing something in Eastern Washington. Find an agent over there, and then over here we'll just market it, because just like in California, people have second homes that are just within
They
their state
move.
somewhere
Yeah.
else. Yeah. So it's
Y-
like we can do it all. It just got to walk through the process of how is the best approach to market it. And,
I completely agree.
yeah,
I'm on the same page. And I actually feel that at the end of the day, it's the buyer's agent they should be the
absolutely.
neighborhood experts, because they're ultimately the one
That's right.
coaching their clients. Like
They're in
that
charge of.
hyper niche market
Yes.
where
Yes.
that house on one side of the street is worth more because of the view than the other side of the street. Like, they should be able to
Yeah.
coach their clients.
Absolutely. And help them understand where that value is, and
Yeah.
why this community is better than that community, so on and so on. It's like, and if they're doing their job, unfortunately, it's like this is such an interesting business, because there are so many licensed agents, and a lot of them don't work maybe full time, or they're not professional realtors. They're
Yeah.
agents that are licensed, and I it's so hit and miss when you're doing a deal, like what that cross agent experience is. And
Yeah, that's always the wild card, is like, you never know who you're going to work with on the other side, and
yeah,
their level of commitment to their client, or to actually get it done.
and does the
Um,
client know the difference, right? Like, as long as they got the deal closed, the client could easily walk away and be like, oh, that was good, whatever. It's different. Like, my husband's a retired physician, and it's
mm,
like, as a doctor, if you're not getting it done, it's very obvious that you're not getting the job done
yeah.
properly, and that patient will go somewhere else. Especially, he was a chiropractor, so it's like,
Oh yeah.
the results are very clear and visible. You
Yeah.
physically know, and so it's very tangible. And it if there was something that wasn't getting the result that patient needs, they'll leave. But I think with especially buyers, they're like, I don't know. I mean, how you're only doing it X amount. A lot of these buyers, they've never done it before. Maybe the last time they did it was 10 years ago. So their level of expectation can be super low. And so they can still walk away thinking that was a good agent. And really, the buyer was doing a lot of work and they didn't even know it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the tricky.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the tricky thing with this entire industry
Yeah,
is you can have a license for 10 years and have done two transactions.
totally.
And
There's no
and
kind of regulation whatsoever as to what that level of expertise is. So
yeah.
it's obviously something we'll always deal with. So it's like, well, really nothing you can do. I just love to appreciate the agents on cross deals that were great, and just be
Yeah.
sure that like I tell them how much I appreciate them.
Oh, they get chocolates and
Yeah,
wine
like
and
it's nice. Like, thank you for making both our jobs so much easier. And also, if you do work in a small market, then of course, I mean, you're like sharing the same fishbowl. So it's
yes.
super like those stand out because you're going to do like a lot of deals with them in 1 year, more than likely.
Yeah. That's what when I first got into business, that was like an aha epiphany moment for me is when I realized that mathematically the majority of these agents I'm never going to compete with.
Totally.
And I might
Right.
like once in a while we there might be some sort of crossover, but the reality is I'm going to have to collaborate with them far more
Yeah,
because we're going to have to work together to
absolutely.
get the deal done.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and I've had this happen where I've collaborated with an agent a couple, like two, three times, and then I compete against them on a listing. And it's like,
No.
that's just the nature of the beast.
It is. It totally is, especially when it's a small circle of like top tier agents, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, and then you see they get it, and you're like, oh, what did they do better than me? Then, but you just know that's just like your odds. You're always going to go up against another good professional,
Of course.
and
Yeah.
it's like it could be a personality thing. It could be, I don't know. I've had clients, sellers that have said, oh yeah, and we met with so and so and they're just dynamic or they'll say something like that and you're like, oh, okay. Maybe at the end of the day I still list it, but you're kind of like, well, also, why did you even interview them? Because you knew me already, I was your neighbor, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can't get your feelings hurt. I think it's just like
Yeah.
people are due diligence. I love that. Okay, you're good. You're doing your job. You're trying to protect your money, your assets, right? So it's like it's okay. I don't have to win them all. And again, there's enough business to go around. So okay, I hope that best of luck to that seller, and I hope that that agent gets it done fast. And again, if it's in my market, I hope it goes well, and I hope that's a good comp for me that I can
Yeah.
use. Kind of how I look
Exactly.
at it. So I'm just like, okay.
You're like, hopefully I can sell it again.
Yeah, exactly.
That'll
So
be the
it's like
dream.
it's just it's always there's enough turnover and there's enough people that sell their homes that it's not like all of a sudden our business is going away. So it's just keeping it constant and steady and getting your name really solid so that people know, you know.
I completely agree. I think having your name strong, your
Yeah.
reputation within your client base, within
Mhm.
your sphere, but also within the agent
Yeah,
community, because if you're known as that person who gets it done every time,
totally.
like we all know that agent who they
Mhm.
blow up deals left and right, and you're like, oh, please don't write on this.
Yeah.
Like,
But when you
like
get an offer on your table and you're like, okay, this is not, I'm not loving this.
you're
Like, I mean, it's like, obviously, we're going to do what we can to put this together. But you kind of, you just kind of know going in, well, now I'm going to be doing more work because I'm the one that, you know.
I
So
think
now I'm doing both our job.
that's the funny part that clients don't realize is,
Yeah.
well, one, like we never know the problems we're gonna, like every transaction's different. You never know what you're gonna run into, but you also don't know the other agent. Like they can make it, as we talked about earlier, they
Yeah.
can make it a dream, super smooth.
Yeah.
Like both of you are like, wow, that was easy, and your clients are like, that was easy, and you're like, oh my God, you're right.
Yeah.
But there's those other deals where you're just like,
You pay for it, you
oh my
know?
God,
Yeah.
yeah, you've earned every cent that you made on that one transaction. And you probably lost some because you've had to pay
Oh,
to solve problems.
absolutely. Absolutely. We actually really have a funny one closing next week that was a was a dead listing to one of my team members. So she passed it off to me and another team member to co-list. So this is like on round 3. We're
Oh, geez.
finally pending. We're finally going to close next week. But just because this offer came in when we were off market after it expired for that third time, we're down to nothing on compensation. That's totally like we're actually still in the hole probably individually because now we're splitting it 3 ways.
Oh my God.
And at this point we're like, and I have a staging, one of my agents owns staging companies, so like her staging also is incorporated into all these costs that we
Oh no.
absorb. And we're like laughing because we're so to the point that like that's just like this is what we call just like a public service. Like we are working to pay to get this client on with their life and move forward. Like that's kind of where we're at with the whole thing. So anyways, it's like one of those where you just go, when it closes, you're just like, thank God we
Yeah.
just got it done, even though it cost us money.
I've had a handful that cost me
Yeah.
like I'm like, oh yeah, I've had a few of those.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I mean, the fact that all 3 of us were tied into this thing, it's just like it's just getting smaller and smaller and smaller as we get closer to the closing table. It's like, oh, okay. And it's one of those where you get all caps and text from that client, like about everything.
Oh geez.
So it's not like a grateful client either. It's, you know,
That
so
is the hardest when it's
yeah.
when they're just not like
It's
they don't
not even
realize.
understanding at all. Like, really, like, just the amount of effort it takes to just get this done. And then that there's no appreciation. That's like the worst, like, those are the kind of things where there's no reward whatsoever and it's actually depleting.
Yeah,
I've been doing it so long, I don't really care. Like, those happen every now and then, and
yeah,
you
yeah.
just kind of have to let it go and move on. But one of my agents, the one that's the state owns the staging company, and she's been licensed 3 years. She's just really kind of like beat up about the whole thing. And part of it was I put her on it as the lead because I'm like, you need to experience what this is like. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not going to be pretty, but like I'm not going to shield you and be the person she communicates with all the time because you need to
Yeah.
understand you'll get listings or buyers that can be this way, and you have to figure out how to navigate through a challenging client
Yeah.
and understand, it's one thing to have a challenging deal, but to have a client that you have to deal with all the time and communicate. And it beat her up, but she's like, I have learned a lot. And I'm like, well, that's what it's about, right? You
Yeah.
now, like, you have thicker skin, you got a little bit better of a taste for like where your mental headspace needs to be when you're dealing with difficult situations like that.
That was such a good play.
Yeah.
I had a flashback of when I was in my early 20s and I worked at this bike shop, and this woman was, I've never been beaten up so hard over a negotiation.
Yeah.
Like it was just brutal. And I remember walking back to the office and talking to the manager, Kenny, and I was like, hey man, you got to come save me. And he's like, nope, you're on your own. Here's your parameters, figure it
Mm-hmm.
out.
Yeah.
And I hated him for that, but
Yeah, totally.
but I learned like I learned the most of
Mm-hmm.
changing your vocabulary, how you're
Yes.
packaging it, like drawing a hard line in the sand, and my negotiation skills,
Yeah.
they grew exponentially from that incredibly hard experience.
Yeah, it's like sometimes you just have to be like literally at the low level of something so that you
Yeah.
can figure out, well, how am I climbing out of this and not blowing everything up
Yeah.
while it's happening too, right? So she's done really well with it,
Good.
and she also learned some stuff about also not blurring lines between the staging company slash services that we offer, and like making sure you're also not cutting yourself short on compensation on some of those services, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we in this case they weren't paying for anything, but she was over offering these concierge services, and it's like, what, you just did that to yourself. You just shot yourself in the foot by saying you would do this, that like store their stuff in your warehouse and pay to have movers come and get it and take, like all these things that were on top of what would have been customary stuff. I'm like, yeah, I hope you understand, don't ever offer that again. That's like, you offered this stuff, people will take it,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah. Say less. This is that was a lesson I've learned also in sales
Yeah,
is
yeah.
and also stop selling. Like once
Yes,
the deal's closed, stop selling. Stop giving
yes.
stuff away.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean it was good, but it was like we're already concierge. I don't think you need to like step it up and like give it
Yeah.
another whole level. I mean,
Yeah.
what the services we offer are already awesome. So it's like, oh God. So she got it, but it's just one of those deals where again, and I said to her, because she said, well, I've learned so much. This is, thank you. This has been so great. And I'm like, honestly, Sandra, we all continue to learn. It doesn't matter. That's the thing about our business. We're never experts. We're expert in
No.
certain areas, but we're not experts in terms of the art of the deal. The deal changes every single time.
Always. Yeah.
The line is always moving. There's not the formula that's the formula. So
Yeah.
all we do is pivot from here to there. And you can do it 40 years and you're still learning something random that you've never actually have happened before about some really teeny thing about a house on some piece of land, that this, that, and the other, right? So
Yeah.
it's just, which makes it fun. I mean, I think that's why I love it so much, but you definitely have to have the right kind of attitude and
Yeah.
fortitude to
I
do it.
well said.
Yeah,
Yeah, because to your point, there's no two homes, no two clients,
that's right.
no dynamics of clients are the
No,
same. The other agent on the other side is never going to be the same.
no.
The dynamics between them and their clients, like it's all there's
Mhm.
all these weird, crazy, unknown variables that constantly are in flux, and we're trying to
Yeah,
figure it out. And people's psychology changes through a deal, their stress levels ramp
that's
up
right.
and decline, and all kinds of weirdness. I think that's for me as well. That's the fun part. Is
It is. It keeps
again
it.
we're
It keeps it really. It's always shaking it up. It's not monotonous. Every day's a new day. It's
yeah,
not like you know what you're gonna get, and I think that's like awesome. If you're up for that type of challenge, like
yeah,
you can do it forever. The other thing I love about it is we don't have, there's no like age gap on this,
no,
so you can be a lifer and you
mhm,
can do it, you can scale down and do 5 homes a year if you want or something or whatever, or only take your best referrals. And you can also have passive income for the rest of your life because you can refer them all out and just
yeah,
keep taking passive income when you're 80 years old. I mean,
yeah.
so
I Yeah, what's actually very interesting about this industry in particular is it's the number one industry for self-employed women,
yeah,
number one, and then two, the median age is I think it's like 64,
yeah.
and
Like most
so
people are trying to figure out how to retire,
yeah,
and we're in an industry where it just gets better the longer you're in it. So,
that's the weird part. It's like wine. It's like every year everything gets a little bit better and better, and
yeah,
you're like, "Ah, I don't want to leave now."
I know
Um,
it's good. And my old mentor from Phoenix, well, we were out of Tempe, but Carol is 80, and she still literally runs a massive team, and she is nonstop, and she's one of the top agents in the East Valley in Arizona.
Amazing.
Yeah, and she's 80. So,
I
it's
love
like
it.
that's just like proof in itself that it's like there's no ceiling, there's no limit. And she works way too much, in my opinion, for all the years she's built this business, but
Yeah.
she wants to do that. That's her choice. When I'm 80, I'm going to be like I said, more passing that off and just having great passive income.
I don't know. I can't even imagine where I'm going to be at 80. That's like, I can't even, I don't even have a vision for that one.
I know. I mean, it's so far
Too far
out,
stretch.
right? But yeah, I mean, that's another thing that's great about it is that we really don't have some kind of, you can decide if you want to literally just be 24/7 crazy, or
Yeah.
you can definitely dial it down. And I have an agent on my team that she's a retired police officer.
Hmm. That's cool.
And so she was in San Diego for 30 years and came home back to the state and everything. And so she has a built-in pension, right? So there is an income, there's something there. So it's not like it's a money thing,
Yeah.
but there for a lot of people it's because you want the brain and the challenge and the all of those things. So some people just stay in the game because they want the art of the deal and they just want to do that, right? And like she loves to work with buyers, not as much with sellers. She finds sellers too high maintenance. And it's like, good, you know your lane, you know what you want, where you want to work, like what's your clientele, you know it, right? And she likes buyers. It's like that's awesome because when you don't feel like working, you're not like you. Sometimes she passes off a lead, like if she's going to travel or something like that,
Hmm.
and so she knows the level of where she wants her business to look,
Yeah.
and I don't have expectations to have her do anything different. Like I'm good with that if she's good with that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that again, it's the level of whatever works for that particular realtor, but
I
I
love
think
that.
that's cool because not
I
everybody gets the ability to do that in their profession. Decide how much they want to work.
Yeah, how much or how little.
Yeah,
But I love that she's figured it out. It's
yeah,
like this is my wheelhouse.
that's right.
This is where I want to stay, and that's
Hmm.
totally fine. Like I love the part that there's no wrong answer.
That's right.
This is a choose your own adventure, and
It
that's her
is
adventure, and that's super cool. Heather, this has been so much fun.
so fun.
As I promised, time flew by.
Yes.
Now that you've officially been on the show, I'm a
Yeah.
firm believer that iron sharpens iron. And
Yes.
so you're now invited officially to the Inner Circle group. And
Awesome.
it's where all the past guests,
Yes.
similar heavy hitters like you, get
Nice.
to get together and talk shop 2 times a
Very
month.
fun. I love it.
So I'll
Love it.
send you that invite.
Okay, cool.
So keep an eye out for it. And
Yeah.
I look forward to learning more about your business over there.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. That's awesome. It's been great. And we'll
Cool.
definitely be in touch.
Well, that, my friend, that's a wrap.